Hi everyone, my name is Iben and welcome to another episode of the Road to Planet Zoo 2. In this video we're going to talk about a feature that I wish was introduced in the first game and that I hope to see introduced in the sequels somewhere along its lifetime, not necessarily on launch, and that is hotels and overnight stays. Now, I am aware that this is a contested feature in the Planet Zoo community, so before we talk about the feature itself, I want to talk about why zoos have overnight stays to begin with. And the simple answer to this question is zoos are expensive. The day-to-day costs for zoos are immense, especially when you have larger animals like, for instance, elephants. But a zoo has to keep multiple groups happy at the same time. You have to have happy staff, you have to have happy guests, and happy animals. And all of this costs a lot of money. But it's not just the day-to-day costs. On almost a yearly basis, more rules and regulations are introduced for the betterment of the animals' welfare in captivity. And that is a very good thing, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, these come at quite a high cost for zoos. They have to update their exhibits, they have to update their way of working, and all of that requires a lot of innovation, time, and obviously money. But it's not just rules and regulations. Older buildings and exhibits also need to be replaced or renovated from time to time, and that also comes with a big cost. Sometimes guests are no longer interested in certain areas of your zoo, so they need to be replaced and master planned. Sometimes the zoo decides to phase out an animal from their collection and the exhibit needs to be changed for a new type of animal. Or sometimes a building is simply no longer up to code and needs to be torn down or needs to be heavily renovated. For older zoos, there's also the fact that many of them have monumental buildings, buildings that need to be kept in shape the way they are to preserve the history. This is, for instance, the case for the Zoo of Antwerp. They have several buildings that are considered to be monuments, so you can't just change things about them, but you also have to make sure that they are in a good state so that these can be preserved for the future. So in a nutshell, zoos are expensive, but prices can't keep rising. You can't keep raising your prices because at a certain point you reach a plateau and you reach a point where guests are no longer willing to pay the price that you're asking. And that leads to the need of zoos to find alternate forms of income, things that are giving them a monetary boost without having to raise their ticket prices. And you might have even noticed this at your local zoo. More and more zoos are launching these kinds of events that you can attend so that you can go both to the zoo and also go to the event that they're organizing. These come in all shapes and sizes. You have things like the Light Festival or the Valentine's event at Zoo of Antwerp. You also have things like the Lego sculptures that seem to be traveling from zoo to zoo. All these kinds of events make sure that more guests will visit the zoo because it's something new, it's something temporary, so they are more inclined to visit the zoo. So basically every zoo is looking for new ways of income and overnight stays are a possible solution for that. I'm going to show you a tiny fragment of the ZooInside panel discussion where the host asked the panel members if the zoos in the Netherlands were sleeping on overnight stays, and in the fragment that I'll show you'll see the director of the Burgers Zoo, Alex van Hoof, who will talk about how almost every zoo in the Netherlands is looking at an overnight stay.
Alle dierenparken in Nederland kijken daarnaar. En op de ene locatie kan het, op de andere locatie kan het niet. Beeksberg had natuurlijk mooie ruimte, die zijn erin gestapt, hebben dat hartstikke goed gedaan. Maar alle dierentuinen kijken wel van, is dit ook iets voor ons? Natuurlijk kijken wij er ook aan naar, natuurlijk kijken HSO er ook naar. Maar het is een vraag van, kan het op die locatie? En wat Mark ook zegt, het moet wel, je moet het kunnen doen, het moet rendabel zijn, maar er wordt naar gekeken.
So in short, overnight stays are here to stay. It is a new trend that has been evolving for quite a while now, and there are several zoos all over the world, and especially here in Europe, that are looking into the option. Not every zoo has the option to do it, as Alex van Hoof has mentioned in the previous fragment, but it is something that more and more zoos are looking into because it's a good way to get an alternate form of income. It is, however, very important to keep in mind that hotels and overnight stays come in all shapes and sizes. Because whenever you ask for hotels in Planet Zoo, people usually answer with, well, hotels are just for high budget zoos, and not everyone is building a high budget zoo in Planet Zoo, so this feature isn't really necessary. There are indeed a whole bunch of high budget zoos that have overnight stays. This is for instance the Shark Room in Edenia at Paradise, which is a very high budget zoo that has many different rooms, and many of them are quite pricey. But I do want to counter the fact that only high budget zoos have overnight stays, because this is for instance the glamping option that you have at the Saint Reginald Zoo in France, which is by far not a high budget zoo compared to a zoo like Paradise. There simply are many different options for overnight stays for zoos, and zoos with different budgets can offer different things. I also want to show you another fragment from the ZooInside panel discussion in which you will hear Erik van Vliet, who is a famous zoo designer, especially here in Europe, and he talks about how a zoo like Beekse Bergen has many different possible accommodations that keep in mind many different kinds of budgets.
Wat in Beekse Bergen gebeurt is wel uniek. Hè? De andere accommodaties in het buitenland zijn ook heel erg gericht op dat segment van de markt. Vreselijk duur, terwijl in het resort van Beekse Bergen iedereen af en toe die beleving kan ondergaan. Het is wel heel vernieuwend wat er is.
And to give you an idea of what he's talking about, you have, for instance, the bungalows, and you have a full-on hotel. You also have these kinds of glamping, and even more kinds of different possible options. Overall, hotels are not just for high budget zoos. More and more zoos are doing it, and each zoo is filling it in its own way, with their own budget and with their own prices. This isn't just something for the big zoos, like for instance a Paradise. And that makes me feel that this is a feature that really should be included in the sequel at some point. But as always in these videos, I think hotels should have a modular approach. Because as I mentioned, there are many different ways to have overnight stays and hotels in zoos, so Planet Zoo should offer us a way to have this in their game as well. We should be able to make all sorts of things, from hotels to glamping tents to bungalows and everything in between. These are some of the lodges that I made for the Zoo of Ghent, my current Planet Zoo series, and I would really love to be able to make these functional, to see people go up to them and to sleep in them and just like wake up and look at the animals in the morning. I really want to be able to customize them as much as possible, because for me, I think that is the core thing about the Planet series. I absolutely love decorating everything that I make. I like to be able to make everything from scratch, and for me that is a big thing for hotels in Planet Zoo too. Of course, there need to be some kinds of blueprint that people can use so they don't have to make everything themselves. But I just really want to be able to make whatever room that I want to see. From these hotel rooms to something like a tent where people can sleep in. The only thing that I want to place down to make it functional are these beds. I would want a double bed, a single bed and a bunk bed, and basically a reception piece where you can have guests go to and you can link beds to, so that all of them work with each other, just like, as always, the gift shop in Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster 2. For me, that would be the ideal way of working. Just provide some blueprints for people who don't want to build these themselves, and just allow us who really are deeply invested in making all of these things custom to just make that by simply only providing beds and a reception unit. That for me would be the ideal way to handle overnight stays and hotels in Planet Zoo 2. And that was my video about overnight stays in Planet Zoo 2. Let me know if this is a feature that you would want in an update of Planet Zoo, or even at launch, or if you've ever spent a night at the zoo. I would really love to hear your experience about it. Do everything you want to do, like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next episode of The Road to Planet Zoo 2.